Welcome to Saulcast, where we're talking about Season 5, Episode 5 of Better Call Saul, titled Dedicado a Max. We just watched the episode. This is going to be our instant take, so you'll be hearing our raw, immediate reactions to having seen the episode, but make sure to check back later in the week for our full recap and analysis. By the way, if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, OneTake, check out the link in the description so you can subscribe to our podcast and you too can hear that recap. If you're watching this on YouTube, you might have also noticed this guy next to me.
I'm Adam.
That's Adam. Now you know what he looks like, and you can see he's taking this quarantine very seriously. One of the benefits of the quarantine is that we get to hang out in our parents' basement, and we can do this live because I'm not in a hotel, so we actually have pretty decent Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And we've actually been self-quarantining since before we even knew about the virus.
That's right.
So
It's always good to be prepared.
Yeah.
Anyway, with that, I'm Gil.
I'm Adam.
I'm Alon.
Let's get into it. That's our tech guy, Alon, who's also on the podcast now. So, Adam, this felt like not a lot of big things happened this episode, but I think there were some layers peeled back for a few characters. I think we can start with Mike and Gus and their conversation at the end of the episode, where for me, this showed us a few things. Number one, we find out that Gus is essentially an anonymous donor for, I thought it was just a hospital, but it sounds like it's maybe the village, and we saw all the school children, so there's a school there.
Yeah, I think Gus is basically funding that whole town and making sure the people there have decent lives.
And in the middle of the town, there's a fountain that says Dedicado a Max.
Which, as soon as I saw the fountain, Gil, can you confirm that I said this? I bet that's a memorial for him.
I thought I said that.
No, I did.
Really?
Yeah. Alon, do you remember?
He's working on the sound.
He's thinking. He's not sure.
So I think this just, again, showed us how deep and important the relationship is between Gus and Max. So I think if there were any doubts about whether or not they were more than just business partners, this pretty much gets rid of those doubts.
Wait, you have to be in love with someone to build them a memorial? I'd build you a memorial.
Oh, what, you don't love me?
Not in that way.
So Gus and Mike are talking, and Mike accuses Gus after he learns that he's an anonymous donor for this whole place. He says, "You think this balances the scales? Makes up for everything else?" And Gus says, "I am what I am."
Mike is being a real Mr. Acker here.
Explain.
Just like how he tried to tell Kim, oh, you think, I bet you do some you donate to charity once in a while, you do things like that to make yourself feel better about what you do. And she got defensive about it, whereas
Right.
Gus, he knows what he is.
Yeah, I think Gus is probably not sitting there. I picture somebody with those scales that accountants use where they put coins on both sides of it. I don't think he's sitting there being like, good deed, bad deed, good deed, bad deed. It's just all about what he cares about. He cares about Max. He dedicated something to him. I do struggle to understand. I mean, you said what was his purpose after he avenged Max's death? And I don't know.
Yeah, he just kind of kept doing his thing. I mean, going about his business, and then I guess he had a nemesis in Walt. But otherwise, I don't know what is his purpose in life after getting revenge.
Right.
Which is kind of the theme of, like every Quentin Tarantino movie.
Yeah, that's true. Or a lot of revenge stories,
Yeah.
right? It's the Punisher. He went after revenge, and then he became obsessed with
Punishment.
punishing crime, criminals. So Mike accuses Gus of exactly what Mr. Acker accused Kim of, donating a little bit of money and thinking that makes up for everything else you do. Now, this place, Gus made the comment that he doesn't want the woman who lives there to know the association between Gus and Mike because he wants to keep his business as separate from this place as possible. This place, to me, felt like sacred ground to Gus.
It's like Rivendell in Lord of the Rings, where after Frodo gets stabbed by the ring wraith and he wakes up with all the elves. It's really nice. He has a nice bed.
Right, that's exactly what that's like.
Yeah.
And why would he bring Mike here, though? Frodo, I can understand. Frodo went through a lot. But Gus brought Mike to this sacred place. Why do you think he did that?
I think maybe Mike is the closest someone could get to being a friend of Gus's. I don't know if Gus actually feels something for him besides he will be useful to me, but maybe that's the best you can hope for.
Also,
Get treated nice.
Mike is a kind of similar name to Max.
Yeah.
There you go.
I mean, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt.
He likes M's.
Yeah.
That's why we brought Alon here, for those deep insights. You made a comment before we turned on the stream that Gus is such a sociopath. And this almost made me think a little bit the opposite, that we look at Gus as super professional, sociopath, emotions don't get in the way, they don't play into anything. And I wonder if we're actually seeing emotions get in the way a little bit here, where maybe he is relating to Mike on a fundamental level. Gus's life at the moment is defined by seeking revenge. And he looks at Mike and sees somebody that's on a similar path. So from a professional standpoint, would you really want Mike working for you in the state that he's in? There's an argument to be made that you can see the talent. It's like buy low, sell high. This big talent that's currently sitting in the gutter. So Gus can get him and develop him, and then he'll have a really solid asset. But when Mike asks him why he's there, Gus says, because you understand. Mike says, understand what? And Gus tells him, revenge. So is Mike truly there partially for this emotional reason, just because Gus sees a part of himself in Mike?
It could be. I think Gus does a good job understanding people's motivations. And he did the same thing with Walt, where you're saying a man provides for his family. He can understand. He first of all, he spies on people, so he learns what's actually going on with them. I'm sure he knows everything that happened with Mike and his son in Philadelphia, right?
Right.
He probably knows every last detail about it. So on some level, Gus probably can relate to him.
Mm-hmm.
And on another level, he knows that this is going to get him what he wants out of Mike. But I brought up Gus being a sociopath not to say that this is an example of it, but to say it's too bad they made him a sociopath, or that he's such a... I mean, he's so insane, basically.
Right.
Especially in Breaking Bad, but definitely in Better Call Saul, too, which makes it hard to sympathize much with his backstory. Mm-hmm. I sympathize with it enough to think that it's effective writing and it's not an actual criticism, but I would love for there to be a prequel or something that just focuses on Gus, but I don't see that happening because ultimately he's a really grotesque character.
Right, and when he says, I am what I am, I asked myself, well, what is he? What is that exactly? And I would really struggle at this point to lay that out, because you can talk about some of his motivations and what they are, but I do wonder if by the end of this series, we'll have a better answer to that question. With Walt in Breaking Bad, I struggled with the same question. Why is he doing all this? And in the finale, he laid it all out. He literally said, I did it for me. I felt alive. That's why I did it. The whole I'm doing it for my family was part of justifying what he was doing. And I'm curious if I imagine they're not done exploring the Gus character. So I wonder if we'll have a more complete answer to that question.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much more to learn about him. First of all, we have the whole Madrigal connection, which is yet to be touched at all in this series. Mm-hmm. So how does he wind up working with this German conglomerate? Maybe he needs their help. Maybe he somehow gets their help finishing this lab. That's how they become part. Who knows?
Right.
That's more to do with his future, but we also know he has a shady past in the Chilean military. Mm-hmm. And that's been untouched, but I'm sure that was defining for him too.
Was he in the military?
I'm not sure exactly. The only extent that they referenced it was they said something about who you were back in Chile.
Right.
Yeah. Who I think he was part of the regime or something.
Yeah. By the way, he's such a great actor.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, I keep seeing him pop up in different shows lately. We were watching Westworld the other day, Alan. I think that's where we saw him pop up.
Yeah. He was great.
Yeah, he was great in that. He's a major character in The Mandalorian. So, not that he needs it, but shout out to
Giancarlo Esposito.
I'm
glad we both talked over each other, so you won't know if we said ya or ja.
Alon, when he's editing, though, he's going to separate the audio tracks one after the other. Any other thoughts on Gus or Mike in this episode?
I like them.
Every time I see Mike repair something, it makes me want to learn how to repair stuff.
We could all use a mic.
Yes.
Got a lot of bodies to clean up.
Yeah.
I've got some people we need to go to Belize.
That was a good one.
Kim and Richard, that's her boss at her law firm, have a confrontation in front of a bunch of people.
Yeah, I mean that was Kim's choice. He tried to handle it nice and subtly. He was going to let her get away with it.
Right. He was being very kind to her because you and I, or the three of us, were talking last episode about how much more are they going to put up with when it comes to Kim, where repeatedly she has prioritized other things over Mesa Verde. In this case, she feels bad for Mr. Acker. She wants to help him keep his land, and she's making arguments that are clearly for him and not necessarily in the best interest of Mesa Verde. Not only that, but now she's actually, now Jimmy, Saul Goodman, is fighting Mesa Verde. Mesa Verde themselves, they're actually buying on the surface that this is not Kim's doing. Richard sees through it, though, and rather than firing her or creating a lot of problems for her, he looked the other way, and he was going to leave it unsaid. He even said certain things are better left unspoken. And she doesn't let it go. She could have walked away. Everything would have been fine. But like you said, she put up a big fight. Richard, what are you saying? What are you accusing me of? I fought so hard to get Mesa Verde, and you think I'd throw it all away for Mr. Acker? And he goes, if this is how you want to play it, fine.
It feels like Saul is rubbing off on her, where even when she's clearly been called out and she just will not admit that she's guilty, no matter what.
Yeah.
So why do you think that is? Why did she fight so hard in this scene to stay on Mesa Verde?
I think she's so conflicted about what to do, and unlike Gus, she can't accept that she is what she is. She can't accept inconsistency in her behavior, and so she tries to either prove how virtuous she is or demonstrate that she wouldn't contradict what her responsibilities are supposed to be, even though that's what she's doing, and so it kind of throws her into cognitive dissonance, and she sort of freaks out.
Right.
Yeah.
She sees herself as a good, virtuous person, and at a minimum, she wants other people to see her that way, and I think she can't take the fact that she's now been accused of doing this. But do you think any part of this is that she thinks it's a more advantageous position for her? Is it purely an emotional reaction? And I haven't fully thought this through, so I'll have to think about it more. But is there any benefit to her staying on Mesa Verde? She's still going to get paid, even if she gets kicked off the case.
Yeah.
But in terms of her plan with Jimmy to help out Mr. Acker.
Yeah, I mean, she's their person on the inside, and she can still try to help somehow. But another point I wanted to make about this is, like, what she's doing isn't necessarily even good for Mr. Acker. Like, just because he wants to keep his house doesn't mean that what's best for him is to have some kind of like 2-year protracted legal battle until he eventually gets dragged out.
Right.
Maybe what's best for him is to have the Band-Aid ripped off and move somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of what she's doing is very selfish.
Yeah, that's actually
and like not in a good constructive way, but in a way that's kind of taking advantage of him for her own thrills.
And what? Yeah, that's funny. I hadn't considered that angle. In my mind, this was all Kim is fighting for Mr. Acker, but there's clearly more to it than that. This is it her thrills, or is it like it makes her feel good about herself? Why is she so passionate in fighting for Mr. Acker here?
Everyone on this show seems to need something to fight, something to push against, and you see that from Saul. I mean, that's like the whole show is about him doing that. You see that with Gus seeking revenge. You see that with Mike. He needs to do something. He either needs to be looking after Kaylee, or he needs to be committing crimes, or even just fixing the windowsill. And without that, he loses his mind.
Yeah. And John Doe in the chat says, deep down, Kim has grown to hate Mesa Verde.
Definitely.
I don't even know if it's that deep down. I think that she hates them at a pretty surface level. But
and down, all the way down, though.
Yeah, I think she despises them because of what they've done to her, the way they keep pulling her away from her pro bono work, and I think making her feel less virtuous. And ironically, she's reacting in a way that's putting her more on the Saul Goodman side of things, where she's acting What's the opposite of virtuous?
Badly, yeah.
I was trying to get more creative. Listening back to last episode when I was editing.
Vice is the opposite of virtue.
There you go. Okay. I kept using the words good and bad. I was like, she's trying to be good, but she keeps being bad.
She's Breaking Bad. Yeah, I think she's sort of addicted to rule breaking.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, that's another theme that's like you see throughout the whole universe of Breaking Bad is like what people's vices are.
Right.
Even Marie, Hank's wife in Breaking Bad, it's sort of a side plot, and it really doesn't go anywhere. But it just shows even her, she's addicted to stealing.
Right. Kleptomania.
Yeah. So everyone's got a vice. Everyone has something that's like a drug to them.
Right. Yeah, and I wonder if Gus's statement, I am what I am, is him sort of recognizing he has this part of himself and he just accepts it, versus everyone else in the show, Kim especially, battling herself constantly.
Right. Whereas if you just accept it like Gus or like Walt eventually does, it can take you really far and you can achieve terrible or great things.
Right. And at what cost?
Depends.
Half your face? Any other thoughts on Kim in this episode? Oh, actually, one thing. What do we think she spotted when she was looking at the pictures that were taken in, what's his name? Kevin?
Yeah.
His office?
Maybe she found a copy of that picture Saul showed Mr. Acker.
I know what you're into.
Yeah. No, I don't know. You and I both, our thoughts went to the same place, which is like maybe he plagiarized the trademark for their brand or something. But I think that's unlikely.
It feels a little silly, but everything she was pulling up on her screen seemed very related to the logo of the guy on the horse. We see the scene opened with a very close-up image on her screen.
Yeah, like you could see every little pixel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. This is one of those things that I think we're going to get a curveball or find out something we wouldn't have predicted.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if he plagiarized that logo himself. Probably, if that is what happened, it probably would have been someone he hired or someone on his design team.
Right.
Alon's plagiarized a few logos in his day.
No, they were royalty free.
We actually did have a website where we created Flash movies and games back in the day, and we had somebody on our staff. Somebody emailed us, wanted to contribute, put up this video, which was great. And then we found the exact same video on another website with a slightly different color scheme. Turns out he stole the video.
Yeah.
Fired him immediately.
I think he exported the SWF file and then just tweaked some colors.
You should have left it up there anyway. I mean, who would have noticed? It would have gotten you more traffic.
We're too virtuous.
Yeah,
Prediction. Right. So his name is Kevin, right? The Mesa Verde guy. When he was a kid, he saw an image of a man riding on a horse. And he was so taken by it, and it had some emotional significance to him. And he used that as the logo for his company. So when Kim rips him apart and says, you stole the logo, he's going to have a very tearful monologue where the very thing that sparked his company will be the very thing that lights the flame and turns it to ashes.
I don't think that's what's going to happen. It's very poetic. John Doe says, haven't seen Nacho or Lalo in a while, which is true. And I got excited because in the opening credits it said Tony Dalton, who's the actor for Lalo. I didn't know if they introduced that if they put him in the credits every episode, but I guess they do. Because I thought it meant we were going to see him this time.
Well, you made the exact same comment on the last episode where his name popped up and then he wasn't in
I
the
think
episode.
You made that comment.
Whether
that
you
time.
Agreed with me. Though.
Yeah. So I fell for it again. I was hoping to see him. We both enjoy him.
I know. Lalo has been one of the best characters added to this show, so it's a bummer we haven't seen him.
That said, he often actually, ironically enough, provides a lot of comic relief, and this episode had enough humor in it to go around.
Yeah, true. Actually, speaking of which, unless there are any other thoughts on Kim or Richard or Mr. Acker?
No.
All right, well, speaking of comic relief, we have the return of fan favorite Sobchak. Mm-hmm. Some people call him Trevor because he is portrayed by character actor Steve Ogg, very well known for voicing the character of Trevor in Grand Theft Auto. And people find his character in Better Call Saul very similar to Trevor. So a lot of people just call him Trevor in the show. He also goes by Mr. X. Anyway, he's the guy that Kim and Jimmy hired to go into Kevin's office and take pictures. If you thought you recognized him, it wasn't just because he's a recognizable actor, but but he was in season 1, episode 9 of Better Call Saul. He was one of the potential bodyguards that Mike was competing against when Price, baseball card guy, was going to hire a security guard.
My cards.
That guy,
yeah.
exactly. Forget about the cards. John Doe in the chat says it's likely Jimmy would be the one who would make that argument. You're right. Kim probably wouldn't turn on Mesa Verde and point out that the logo is wrong.
Yeah.
She fought to get back in the case.
Yeah, it's more of a Jimmy pointing out that the numbers are missing on the mailbox.
right, exactly. Which all that stuff
That
was
was hilarious, yeah.
by the way.
I love that.
So I don't have a whole lot to say about Sobchak, except it was just great to see him, and he was hilarious.
I was hoping that when we first started to catch a glimpse of him, I thought, okay, guy with a beard, someone I think we've seen before. Maybe it's Ira, the fellow thief who helped out Saul.
Was he the one who got stuck under the desk?
Yeah. So I think his name was Ira. I can't remember.
Yeah, it sounds right.
Is he also the guy who sold the machine gun to Walt later, or is that a different person?
I'd have to look into that. I don't remember.
Because I know that person has also been in the series, but I don't remember the crossover.
Yeah, with Trevor. Is that his name in the show? Actually,
no, Sobchak.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I loved how excited he started getting when he was proposing kidnapping Kevin. His eyes lit up.
It made me worried that he might do it anyway.
Yeah.
Also, what he was
brought you a gift.
Yeah, it's like a cat going out and killing some small animal. The thing he described, putting a bag over his head and taking him out into the middle of the desert, is exactly what ends up happening to Saul a few years later.
Right. A scene we've brought up so many times, so I'm not going to talk about it.
No.
Any other thoughts on this episode overall?
Loved it. This is one of the very strong season, as every season has been, but this was a really good episode.
Yeah, great episode. It did feel a little bit slower paced than the last few episodes we've gotten, which I think is more in line with how Better Call Saul has been overall. In fact, I would say this season so far has felt like it was moving a little faster than we were used to.
Yeah.
But we are officially, after this episode, in the second half of the season. And for those of you who haven't heard us talk about it, next season will be the final season. So we're getting closer and closer to the end game. So I wonder if things are going to start ramping up a little bit in the next 5 episodes. I also love how we've been waiting for the Mike and Jimmy storylines to intersect for so long. And they still haven't. In fact, they try to, and it's over like that.
Yeah.
Jimmy goes to hire him. He just says, no.
No.
Say again? No.
He's gone.
Great. So I'm sure they're going to collide at some point. Obviously, they're getting closer and closer. Jimmy is now working with Lalo and Nacho, which puts him on the opposite side of this war as Mike. So that could lead to some pretty interesting confrontations. I don't know if we're going to see that this season or if they're saving that for the final season, but can't wait to see. Anyway, with that, I think we can say thanks for checking out this video if you're watching it on YouTube. And if you check out the link in the description, you can subscribe to Saulcast. And later in the week, hear our full recap and review of the episode. We're going to give it more thought, give it a chance to marinate.
We go scene by scene, hear every last thought that Gil has.
Exactly, a full deep dive analysis. And you're going to want to subscribe to the YouTube channel OneTake, because we talk about Better Call Saul, but we talk about a bunch of other stuff too. Westworld, Season 3, by the way, if you were a little disappointed with Season 2, Season 3 was great. Episode 1, blown away by the show. So you're going to want to check out our review of that.
Jesse/Aaron Paul is in it.
That's right. Mm-hmm. One of my biggest complaints of Season 2 of Westworld, there weren't any sympathetic characters.
There were no characters from Breaking Bad.
Yeah. And they said, Gil, don't worry.
Actually, Trevor.
Oh, really?
Trevor,
Yeah, he's in it. Yeah.
Oh, okay, there you go.
And he's just as great there as he is in everything else. There's also a show Devs we're talking about, a great new show on Hulu if you're into sci-fi and you like thinking about stuff. You're going to want to check out that show. So make sure if you're watching this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, hit the bell icon so you get notified whenever we do more videos like this one and the next time we go live, so you, like John Doe, can A, be an awesome person, and B, participate in the chat. Adam, anything to add?
That's it.
All right.
Good job, Gil.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening. And
Be safe.
That's right. Stay safe.
Stay
everyone.
inside. Even if you're young, you don't think you can get sick, you could pass it to someone we love. Mike's getting up there in age.
Right. If you want to hang out with someone,
You never know.
if you
Please. They haven't filmed the last season yet.
I'm not going to be taken down by any virus.
You're so good at that. Actually,